Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to December's Solution Spotlight, hosted by Navient on the topic of reporting dashboards. A couple quick housekeeping items before we get started. We have a lot to cover here, so we're going to go relatively quick. Everybody is muted on the GoToWebinar, so if you do need to communicate with us, please use the chat box for any comments that you have. There's a whole separate section for questions, which we'll be handling at the end of the webinar. So please queue those up as we are going through the presentation. Yes, we are recording this webinar. Everybody that's attending or everybody that registered will actually get a link to the recording once we have that posted. And please do take just a few moments at the end of the webinar to provide some feedback on the survey that's out there. We want to make sure that we provide the topics that you're looking for going forward. My name is Guy Schrader. I am the Manager of Sales Engineering, and I'll be one of your presenters today. And sitting beside me is Ian Wilson, who is an Implementation and Training Specialist with Navient. He will be my co-presenter.
Good morning.
And without any further ado, let's get into the agenda here. So there's a lot of challenges to reporting that organizations have. So we'll somewhat cover that at a relatively high level and then get into really what reporting dashboards are, what kind of data that you can have included on these different dashboards. We'll actually do a little bit of a tour of some of the capabilities of the reporting dashboards and get through some terminology, and then actually go through a little bit of a demo, leave a little bit of time for some recap and questions and answers at the end of things. So as I mentioned, we have a lot to cover here. This is going to be a relatively rapid pace. So some of the challenges that we have for reporting, if you're like most organizations, business analysts or other individuals that actually want to generate, want reports off of information in your different systems, they oftentimes have to send an email to somebody in IT that actually consumes that. We wait for a response coming back from IT saying, okay, I think I understand what you're looking for. Is this what you're looking for? And then another email goes back to the IT resource. Yep, that's what I'm looking for. Obviously, time is passing here, and depending upon how busy your IT resources are, there may be an even larger leg there. I've heard it many times. IT is so busy that any requests that we have for them take months to actually get back. Not to disparage against the IT group, but that's reality in a lot of different organizations. Finally, the IT department is able to go ahead and generate that report, get it back to you, and hopefully that's what you're looking for. Obviously, that's the big challenge here, because a lot of us don't have the capability of reporting directly on the systems that we have access to, which leads us into what are reporting dashboards in your OnBase system. This is something that was introduced a number of versions ago. Actually, in OnBase 14 is when this came out, and it really is, it's a reporting tool. But what that allows us to do is to provide some immediate visibility into the status of your system, the business health, on a variety of different things. Really, really broad uses and capabilities of reporting dashboards. And what we're going to show today is really just a microcosm of some of the major capabilities here. This data is querying real time from your OnBase system. So you're able to refresh these dashboards so you really know the current status of everything. Users can create their own dashboards and share them with other individuals. So this does not require an IT resource to configure these different reports after everything's all said and done. The data can be presented in a variety of different formats, whether we're talking about what we call grids in the OnBase system, charts, bar charts, pie charts, different graphs that we might have. There's different scorecard capabilities. There's maps where we can actually show heat zones and things like that, and a variety of different capabilities. So rather than telling you about this, how about I give you just a couple screenshots here what this ultimately looks like. Just a couple of examples that we're talking about based upon a map like of the United States. Where are we seeing high numbers of documents that are coming into the system? Or based upon a bar chart that we see on the right-hand side here, summing up the invoice amount. So obviously an an accounts payable scenario here that we're looking at. Or showing a few different things. That's a grid in the upper left-hand corner that's showing us some different information about where things are currently sitting. Or pie charts in the lower left-hand corner, and there's different ways that we can dimension that information to show us between the different cues that we have there. Those are the different pie charts, but then the different slices of the pie is based upon different information, or again, more bar charts or something even a little bit more broad, different filters that we see on the left-hand side of the screen. And again, getting back to the raw data. So we have a whole bunch of different capabilities within the reporting dashboards. And once we get into this, Ian will show us how we can actually set this up. So what can I report upon? Well, ultimately, this gets into a little bit of the terminology here. There's a concept of data providers inside of reporting dashboards, and that's really what allows us to now gather the raw data from our OnBase system. By the way, we do have capabilities of querying outside systems, so it's not specifically what's inside of OnBase to grab that information. And there's wizards to go ahead and grab that information from these different data providers. Now, these different data providers, there's a number of different ways that we can grab information. Through like a document query, we're looking truly at document types and keyword information. There's data providers for agenda and minutes for our government customers that are out there reporting upon that information. Distribution services, document imaging queries, so think about the things that are coming through and being scanned. How long does it take to process these different batches that we're scanning and indexing? Workflow activity, how long are things taking as we go through a workflow process? Workflow inbox data, where do things currently sit at this point in time inside of a workflow? So this is a little bit more real time at this moment. Workflow configuration, how is my workflow system set up? We can even get to WorkView data in more recent versions of OnBase, as well as if none of these different data providers above work for us, we have the ability to go ahead and write our own SQL queries to go grab that information, and the same tool would be used to grab data from a third-party database, assuming that we can access that information. Now, I'd be remiss just to mention, we're going to show a lot of this demonstration inside the OnBase Unity client, but reporting dashboards, to be able to view the dashboards can be done through the web client, and there's also a web viewer. So just to give you a really quick view of what that looks like as I'm taking a look at my Unity client, and this is version 17 and beyond, by the way. For some of those people that might be on an older version, the user interface might look a little bit different. But we have the hamburger menu in the upper left-hand corner. When we expose that, way down at the bottom, you can see that we have our reporting dashboards gallery. And when I actually execute that and open up a specific report, then that displays the information that has been configured on that particular reporting dashboard itself. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ian at this point in time, and he's going to now go through many more details about reporting dashboards and how we configure these things.
So good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and jump on in with the Unity client here. So this is where I land whenever I jump into the Unity client. And to get to our reporting functionality, we'll go ahead and go straight to this reporting button in the ribbon bar. Once we jump into the reporting area, you'll see we've got a lot of information here. So we'll do a little tour around the screen. On the left here, we have our gallery. So the gallery is going to be where you can select any of the dashboards that you'd like to jump into. And upon selecting the dashboard, you'll see if we select one here, it'll appear on the right-hand side within the actual main dashboard pane. Every time we select a new dashboard, we'll go ahead and actually create a new tab for that dashboard, which allows you to have multiple dashboards open at one time so that you can be jumping back and forth between different pieces of information you would like to look at. Another term I'd like to point out here is the dashboard item. So if you hear someone using the word dashboard item, that refers to one of these panels that displays the information. Currently, I have a filter highlighted here, and that's one of our dashboard items. Going back to where we were before, if we jump to the left-hand side, we also have categories. So these categories will allow us to group our dashboards as necessary so that we can organize the information more appropriately when we have multiple dashboards that we would like to jump into. So that's just kind of a basic overview of the main layout, but let's dive into our ribbon bar here. This is where some of the fun can really start. So on the top left-hand corner of our ribbon bar, we have our new area. So this is where we can create new dashboards or create new reports, pretty self-explanatory. As we move to the right, we have some other options within the gallery. Now, which options are going to appear in your ribbon bar will depend upon your security and user settings. So in my case, what I can see here is this ability to copy to new, which will allow me to copy the dashboard into a new dashboard, delete this dashboard, or perhaps look at the history of all of the changes of the dashboard. We also have the ability to update properties and look at the design of the dashboard, which is something we'll dive into in more detail in a moment. Continuing on our ribbon bar, we have some of our viewing options. So on the left, we have full screen. If you really want to see the whole dashboard full screen, that's just what you'd click there. We also have this clear all filters button. So on this dashboard we've got displayed here, there's that filter by vendor type. If I were to select a vendor type and the whole dashboard would be filtered to that piece of information, I could click that clear all filters button and get back to the overall view that we have in front of us right now. Now to the right of the clear all filters is a grayed out parameters function, and that's because this dashboard isn't using parameters. But you could use a parameter, which would be a user entered piece of information that could be asked for prior to loading the dashboard. So again, using our vendor type example, I could ask the user to put in a type of vendor, maybe engineering as a parameter, and then the dashboard would only load the information associated with that parameter.
Or if we're looking for analysis based upon date parameters or something like that. A couple good examples.
Yep. The last piece that we have here is our refresh. So we mentioned that real-time data is pulled from our dashboards. If you ever want to get the latest ping back to the database and get information, you could refresh the dashboard and see the real-time information. The last section of our ribbon bar are the actions. So this is really what you can use to kind of work with the dashboard specifically. On the left, we have the share, which we can use to share the dashboard to other users. And next to that, we actually have our send to. So this is basically an ability to send the dashboard to either your personal page or an email or to other areas of OnBase. Next, we have the copy to clipboard. So the nice thing about this is you can take the dashboard as an image and then post it maybe in a PowerPoint like we have today or in other materials. But we also have that copy hyperlink button. So as Guy was showing earlier that we can use things in the web service or the web viewer, that hyperlink for a web viewer client could be gained from clicking copy hyperlink here. Next, we have the print functionality. Now, we got our basic print functionality, but the real reason I wanted to highlight this is because you could upload the dashboard at this time instant back into OnBase. So perhaps you want to see every Monday, you want to see what the dashboards are looking like. So you upload a dashboard screenshot every Monday back to OnBase, and you can see the changes of the dashboard information over time. And then to the right of that, we have export data, which we can then export the information. That is our basic overview here. I'd like to jump into another dashboard quickly just so that we can see a couple other tools that are available. So I'll open our public items category and select our AP Invoice Processing. And now you can see in a new tab, we have our AP Invoice Processing dashboard that's appeared. Cool thing about this dashboard is that there's the dashboard item of thresholds, or in this case, invoice thresholds. Just another way that you can display the data here. The real reason I wanted to open this is because I wanted to jump into our grid at the bottom and show what's known as a display action. So if I were to double click on the top item in this grid, what that allows us to do is actually open up the invoice here. And so it's a document viewer. So that display action is actually opening the document viewer for us to dive into the items that are within the dashboard more specifically.
Just one other thing to really call out quickly, because I don't think that we're going to talk about it. Notice about halfway down that grid, there's actually an item that's highlighted in pink. There's different ways of bringing color into that grid also based upon some of the parameters. For example, the exception type of no vendor found. I'm not exactly sure if that's the reason why that's popping up, but think about that also as other ways of calling information out to users in especially situations where there's exceptions.
So with that in mind, that's kind of our main view of the gallery information, but with the security that I have, I also have administration options. So you'll notice in the bottom left-hand corner, I have the ability to switch between the gallery view and the administration view. So we'll go ahead and jump into the administration view so we can start looking at some of the nitty-gritty behind the scenes of the dashboards. Once we jump into the administration view, on the left-hand side, you'll see we have a different amount of display options. So here we have the ability to configure data providers or dashboards, as well as other reports and categories that these items will live in. The second section there we have is the admin tools. This will allow us to look at purge history, import and export configuration, and then those external databases that we were mentioning earlier. You can jump into that from here as well. In the main panel, you'll see because we have data providers selected that we have a list of all of the data providers available. So this is all of the information that we can report off of at this point in time. Now for our demo this morning, we're going to go ahead and create a new data provider so that we can go ahead and show the process of how that will work. So if we click the button in the top left-hand corner that's highlighted for Create New Data Provider, we'll see this pop-up here. This pop-up you see in many places of OnBase. And it'll allow you to create or either copy a new copy an existing data provider, or you can create a new data provider. In our case, we want to start from scratch, so we'll go ahead and do a new data provider here. Upon selecting a new data provider, we'll put in a name and description. So this morning, we're going to use a demo workflow inbox as our name, because we'll be looking at workflow inbox information. Now, at that point, now we need to select what type of data we want to report on. So Guy went through many of these options earlier on the different provider types that exist: agenda and minutes, custom SQL, and if we continue scrolling down, all of our workflow and WorkView information as well. We'll go ahead and select our workflow inbox option, and we'll continue forward within creating this data provider. Now look here, the wizard has actually already done some work for us. Since we're doing workflow inbox, what it did is it looked at all of the life cycles that exist within our workflow to allow us to select which life cycles we would like to report off of. In our case this morning, we're going to focus on our AP department. So we'll look at all of the AP life cycles and select OK. Now we get this pop-up here, which will allow us to look at all of the queues that will be pulled in. And we're pulling in a lot of queues for our demo this morning, and this is one area where it may be good if you want to have IT engaged. A good place for them to continue to be engaged here would be within this data provider creation. If you're pulling in a lot of information, there may be resources or items that they could help with at that point as well. In this case, we're okay. We like all of the queues that we have selected here, so we're going to continue moving forward. Now we have the option to update security when it comes to this data provider with either respecting security keywords, respecting any load balancing that may exist, or also doing any date time information. We don't need to select those for this morning, so we'll continue forward. And now we get into our keywords or properties area. So these are the specific items that we'll be able to build our dashboard components off of. All of these items have already been pulled in automatically by OnBase, and most of this is what we need. But since I know I'll be looking at invoices in our dashboard, I want to add in some document-specific information with the document date and document type. So all I need to do is click the add and find that information to pull that into our list. And I have the option to go ahead and create those as parameters should I choose to do so. We'll continue forward and we'll get this nice summary pane here. And so this basically shows with your configuration settings, this is all the information right now that would be pulled in. And it's a little bit of a gut check to make sure, hey, did I build everything the way I wanted to build it? Is this the information I would expect to see? And in this case, yes, it's exactly what we would expect. So we can go ahead and move forward. You could, oh, go ahead.
And I just want to mention that wizard that we went through, that was specific to the workflow inbox. Each of the different data providers, the data types that you would be selecting would have some subtle differences through that wizard depending upon what we're actually grabbing. So very intuitive, the system walks you through all those different components, and obviously you'll need to have some different knowledge for how your OnBase system is configured.
Exactly, the wizard can really make it pretty straightforward for you. So now you can see we have our demo workflow inbox in our list of data providers, and to take advantage of that, we'll move to our dashboard pane so that we can create a dashboard and move forward. Dashboard items here are pretty similar, listed out on the right, and we'll go right into create new dashboard and begin from there. We see a similar pop-up here where we can either copy an existing dashboard if we have a similar one or create a new one from scratch. We'll begin with going from scratch this morning. So I'll put in my name, description, we'll put a quick icon, and something I want to call out here is we can set the dashboard refresh rate as well, so how often you would like that to automatically pull data for you. In this case, we selected 30 minutes. It may vary depending upon your system or your dashboard. The next thing we have here is our data provider, and again, I just kind of want to call this out shortly here. The data provider is what gathers the information that you can display in your dashboard. So without a data provider, we wouldn't have any information to display, which is why we need to select this when we are creating our dashboards. If we did not have a data provider selected, we do have the option to create one here, but since we've already know that there's going to be one perfect for us, we'll add the one we just made by clicking the add button. And now we have our data provider associated with this dashboard, and we can continue forward. At this point, we can select what users should have access to the dashboard and their access levels. So for today, I'll have full control as the manager, and that's what we'll need. But perhaps you'd like to have other folks with read control or modify control, or another person who could actually delete the dashboard as well with full control options. This is where you could add that information. We get a quick summary. Everything looks good to me. Does it look good to you guys?
Perfect.
All right. So we'll keep on moving forward. And what happens is we are now brought directly to our design area of OnBase.
So this is where you get to be a Picasso. You know, this is where the fun comes in.
So this is where we're going to start to really slice and dice the data. So now that we're in the design area, I'll start by going on the left and show you the data source. So if you notice, these are the keywords or properties that we selected when we created that data provider. And that's exactly what we can pull from to go ahead and create all of our items and report off of that information. In the top right-hand corner of our ribbon here, we have our dashboard items that are selected here. This is the wide range of information that you can use to slice and dice the data. And for this morning, we'll go ahead and start off with a chart. So by selecting the chart, we'll notice that the screen changes a little bit. We see this data items pane on the left-hand side, and we'll also see that we've got a large open pane on the right-hand side. What the data items pane is that's where you'll drag and drop your keywords and your properties into those different fields to really configure the data as you'd like it to be seen. For our bar graph this morning, I'd like to see a count of how many items are within each lifecycle queue. So what I'll do is I'll drag in the information, and we'll get a count of the items within each lifecycle queue, and we are including for the label the queue name and lifecycle name so that we can see not only what queue, but what lifecycle those live in. So this is a pretty straightforward piece of information, but let's add some more so we can really get more use out of our dashboard. We'll go ahead and jump into the pies item so we can see kind of a slice and percentage of how much data is in within each lifecycle queue. When you originally select the pies, it will automatically appear on the right-hand side of our designer here. A cool feature with the dashboard designer is you can actually drag and drop all of the dashboard items into any area that you would like. In this case, I'll move it to the left, and then I'll add in my values so that we can see two separate pie charts, one for each lifecycle, and within each pie chart, we can see the queues as different wedges, and the size of the wedge is based off of the number of items. From that point, we've got some good graphical representation of our data, but I'd also like to list out what are all of the items within our lifecycle queues. So to do that, I'll go ahead and select our grid dashboard item. Once I select the grid dashboard item, it'll again appear wherever the system thinks would make sense at first. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and add in the columns that we'd like to see for the information, and then readjust things with some dragging and dropping to get to this point. So now we have a column for all of the information we'd like to see, and we've adjusted our dashboard so it's a little bit more visually happy, I would say. So at this point, we've got some basic information that's displayed, but one of the best features with reporting dashboards is the interactivity that we can have. So we'll add in some interaction items. We'll go ahead and first add in a filter by jumping into the filter menu, and I like checkboxes, so we'll use a list box. And I would like to be able to filter based off of the life cycle itself. So we'll go ahead and add in the life cycles as our argument here, our dimension. And when you check a life cycle, you'll notice that upon checking the life cycle, we now have all the information filtered appropriately, and it's only information associated with that life cycle. Checking all, and you'll see that we have everything come back to normal here. So another interactive point I'd like to call out is within a dashboard item specifically. So every time you select a dashboard item, you'll notice I just switched to selecting the pie items. You get a little gray outline. Everything will now be focused around the pie items, both on the left and on our toolbar at the top. You'll notice we have this pie tools section where we can see both data and design information. If we click into our data information here, you'll notice that we have a lot of interactivity options. What I would like to do is add in another filter. So I'll go ahead and click the multiple master filter option here. And upon clicking that option, what this will allow me to do is if I were to click on any section of the pie chart, we can now see everything is filtered just to what I selected. And so that allows for the users to interact and click on pieces of the pie chart to filter the whole information. Now to clear this information, we'll go ahead and right click and clear master filter, just another way you can clear filters as you're moving through. At this point, this brings us back to our overall piece. I would like to quickly just show out our design tab on the pie tools. So you can also change color, shape, tooltips, anything within each to really customize the dashboard items to whatever you would like them to appear as. With that in mind, I think the last thing I would like to show how we can move forward here is another display action using our grid at the bottom. In order to do that, we'll jump into our properties item on the ribbon bar highlighted here. And upon clicking properties, we'll get an update of all the properties associated with this dashboard. On the left-hand side, we've got all of our basic information. So who it's shared with, the categories, the data providers, and our display actions. And the middle shows our main properties. We'll go ahead and click our display actions. And upon jumping into display actions, we have the ability to add any display action. So now that we can add our display actions, we'll go ahead and click add. And we have multiple types of display actions that we can go ahead and do here. For today, we'd like to show the invoice because we're an AP. So that'll be displaying a document. So if I go ahead and add that information, we can display our document information. But I do want to call out there are other actions of items you can display, such as WorkView objects, workflow information. It's not limited to just document display here. We'll go ahead and select OK. We'll select OK on our properties. And we could test everything in real time within this designer as I've been showing you. But since this is our last item, I'd like to go ahead and close out of the designer and show you the full dashboard from our dashboard viewer. So we'll go ahead and close our designer.
Save and close.
Save and close. Thank you, Guy. It's good to call that out because sometimes if you forget, that's a lot of wasted work. So we'll save and close our designer, and then we'll jump back to our main reporting area here and click Open Dashboard with our dashboard selected. And now you can see everything within that dashboard viewer. To check our display action, I'll go ahead and select an invoice here in our grid, double click, and our invoice pops up within our document viewer. So that was a really quick whirlwind of dashboard information, just showing you some high-level pieces, but wanted to show you some of the cool tools that we have, and I'll hand it back off to Guy to do a quick recap.
All right. Thanks, Ian. That was a great walkthrough demonstration there. As you can see from that demonstration, it's a super powerful tool. Not only are we displaying the information that's pertinent to those different users, it's interactive. It allows them to drill down further into information, really allowing the user at real time, how do I want to slice and dice this information rather than going back and saying I need to develop a whole different report to go ahead and drill down to this information. So really important stuff there, and we've found a lot of our customers love this tool, and users are really taking full advantage of all the capabilities here. But again, you got those display actions as we talked about, but also keep in mind that any of these reports, well, you need to be in an OnBase and it's real time. If you wanted to take a snapshot of that, you can still go ahead and export that information, whether it be saving that as a document instead of OnBase, creating just an image of that, being able to share that with other people, so on and so forth. So, relatively quick recap here. Why should you use it? Again, get your users engaged with the information that's inside of your OnBase system or even those third-party systems without engaging IT here. A lot of these capabilities, probably about the only thing that we do see that oftentimes stays inside the hands of IT is oftentimes that data provider creation. Sometimes we do want to lock that down because you are actually grabbing that data real-time from the database. If you do it incorrectly, potentially you could have a resource hit on your OnBase database server. But you can present all of that complex data. Think of all of the data elements that you can bring in, but now make it pertinent to your different users through the bar charts, the pie charts, the graphs, so on and so forth. But really now allow people to have that real-time decision-making capability and seeing where the trends and the bottlenecks might actually lie inside your system. So last but not least, we need to talk about what is this and what does it actually cost. It is a $10,000 enterprise license, so it's just another component that gets added to the rest of your OnBase licensing. You don't need to have special user clients. Given anybody that has a user client to get into OnBase based upon permissions, you can expose this capability. This was developed in OnBase 14. Some of the data providers that we did see were added in more recent versions, so keep that in mind. But this does require the Unity client for the configuration of these reporting dashboards and the viewing, but also the web client is a viewer also. This does not render reports within the OnBase Thick client. I just wanted to call that out. If you are interested, please do contact your Navient account executive. And with that, I know that we're pretty much right on time, just about 10:30 Central. So if anybody has any questions, please do pose them within the questions panel. And I'm checking really quickly and sizing my screen. It is a super small question. Okay. The question being, forgive me, I have to try to size things here. I cannot see the entire question. Beginning with, what version is WorkView available to report on? Good question. WorkView data provider was added within OnBase 18, so that would require that version. Custom SQL to external database. Do I need an ODBC connection from OnBase or just a full connection string? We do need to have an ODBC configured to be able to grab that, and that would actually be at your application server level back to that third-party database. And those are the only questions that we have at this point in time. We will actually hang on to this GoToWebinar for a few more minutes after we finish up here. So please, if you do have any questions, still continue to pose them there. But with that, I wanted to take just a moment and wish you all a happy holidays. I know that this is probably one of our last webinars of the year. We always appreciate every interaction that we have with all of our customers. So thank you so much for supporting Navient as we support you and your organization going forward. And with that, thank you again. Happy holidays, and we will see you in 2019.
Thanks, everybody.